My name is Taylor. I work with the Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section as the Brand and Communications Advisor, and I am a proud Yorta Yorta woman. The Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the lands we live and work on. We respect the knowledge of and connection to land, sea and sky that Aboriginal people have. We pay our respect to elders past and present as holders of knowledge and seek to work with emerging elders in the journey of reconciliation.
The rationale behind why we are on our reconciliation journey is really to move the organisation from simply being a provider of services to Aboriginal people to being an organisation that's culturally appropriate and therefore working with Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal staff in the way and the design of the care that we provide. We are hoping that the journey to reconciliation will improve the impact that our care has in communities, and in particular to close the gap of inequality of access to health care and health outcomes amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities.
The RFDS South Eastern Section are understanding that they're young in the journey of reconciliation and that there's a lot of work to be done in regards to how we move forward. The organisation has the opportunity to not only empower First Nations voice, but to empower its workers to echo that voice to the communities that they provide service to. That journey should be led by First Nations people. That journey is something that needs to be empowered by a First Nations voice.
The South East Section developed our own cultural perspective training package. It is a two-part process, so the first part has been implemented.
Walk beside your Aboriginal colleagues, learn from them, be open to them because they will show you the way.
That's, I guess, providing an overall view for our clinical workforce. Some aren't even from Australia, so it's giving them some knowledge from First Nations employees about how they should approach communities, what they need to consider in their communication. And then the second part is actually going out on country and having that experience or having that knowledge given to them by traditional owners so that they get the whole experience. The process of implementation of the RAP is extremely important if we are going to be recognised as a culturally safe organisation, and we as an organisation can't say that fits the communities that we service. They're the ones that determine whether we are a culturally safe organisation. So involving them in all aspects of delivery, development, review of the activities that we've implemented, and getting their responses is what will inform the success of the RAP, having them come along the journey with us. So the RAP will be meaningful when we actually see outcomes on the ground in the communities that we deliver services to. And by that I mean that they feel that they are contributing to the health of their community, to the welfare and providing for their families.
My hope is that for 2023, when we go into that evaluation, is that not only have we got some really, really solid runs on the board, but we actually move into 2024 with a better direction and a clear vision.
We still have some ways to go, but this process benefits the Royal Flying Doctor Service in many ways. We will be recognised as holding true and important partnerships with the communities that we provide care for. It enables us to be a better employer. It enables us to have staff that understand both the importance of and the need to commit to a reconciliation journey. And importantly, it improves the relationships that the organisation has with communities, with individuals and also the Aboriginal community-controlled health sector. And we are seen as an employer of choice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people wanting a career in health in rural New South Wales.
If any organisation can say that their work is never done, it is the Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section. This past year has been simply extraordinary. Not only has the Royal Flying Doctor Service delivered the critical emergency retrieval and the primary healthcare services that rural and remote communities have come to rely on, you became an important component of our national and New South Wales health response to the pandemic. Providing screening and testing, transporting COVID-19 positive patients, and the critical rollout of primary vaccination and boosters were all part of a life-saving team effort. Achieving these outcomes, including the mind-boggling figure of 32,000 vaccinations in just a few short months, the most of any of the RFDS sections around the country, doesn't happen without the support of agile, professional and committed people. You have worked closely in partnership and alongside primary health networks, local health districts, local Aboriginal medical services and other service providers, while expanding services into new areas of New South Wales, including clinics at Greywin, Burren Junction and Pilliga. Together with expanding capacity in non-emergency patient transport, you have also responded to an increased need for mental health services and a rising demand for both retrieval and patient transfer services and telehealth consultations. The determination and dedication to provide the very best in healthcare to all sectors and all regions is why Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern is so important to our community and so loved and respected worldwide. In marking the passing this year of your royal patron, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, we recalled the visit of the royal couple to the service's Broken Hill base in 1954 and the on-air conversation the young Queen had with another young mother from Mallarina Station, near Lake Eyre, who spoke about the importance of the Royal Flying Doctor Service to outback families. As very proud patrons, we thank all at Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern for your constancy, your professionalism, and the excellence of the personal, medical and health care you provide to communities across our state.
Good morning everyone. I'm David Lyle, President of the Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section. Thank you for joining us for the year in review. For all of us, 2021-22 was a year dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a service, it brought both challenges as well as opportunities for us. Our response to the pandemic and ability to meet the needs it created, while continuing to offer existing services, is a testament to our commitment to our communities. I believe our ability to serve those remote communities was why the federal government approached the RFDS to run COVID vaccination clinics in rural and remote communities. The key elements of performance, reliability and adaptability underpin the 94-year history of trust in the RFDS and remain critical to our success into the future. We continue to evaluate the services we deliver, including achieving higher levels of accreditation. We look for new opportunities to meet the needs of communities we serve. Emergency retrievals will always be an important part of what we deliver, but increasingly we are investing in primary health care, access to general practitioners, dental care, mental health services, cancer care and chronic disease management have always been difficult for people who live in remote areas. In the past 12 months, we have expanded our primary health clinics in the northwest corridor of New South Wales to communities like Greywin, Wollmerringle and Ngonia. Likewise, we're investing heavily in telehealth. This isn't a replacement for face-to-face consultation, but a complementary service. And during the pandemic, we have come to appreciate its value even more. From an aviation perspective, to ensure our fleet of aircraft perform at their best, 5 underwent an extensive upgrade and refresh, with 1 reconfigured to service remote communities and 2 others redeployed to Broken Hill to support traditional services. 4 of the older aircraft have been sold. Our fleet is now more flexible, allowing for easier redeployment across the network. This new agreement brings together the strength and expertise of each section to enhance our impact. The 2 areas we're starting to work on our aviation and information technology. We also look to strengthen our relationship with all levels of government. The welcomed announcement early this year of a 10-year strategic partnership with the federal government should be the first of many opportunities to work collaboratively at the federal level. Similarly, we are seeking to establish long-term partnership with the state government to continue to deliver essential services to rural and remote New South Wales. There is no doubt there are challenges ahead for us. We find ourselves in a competitive market when it comes to contracts, and a number of those are due for renewal in the coming years. These include the Tasmanian Fixed-Wing Air Transport Service, the Victorian Fixed-Wing Non-Emergency Patient Transport Service, and the New South Wales Inter-Hospital Transport Service. Another challenging area is the recruitment of health workers and pilots. This has become a focus for us as we look to increase our services, recruiting from both within Australia and overseas. I'd like to thank our patrons, Her Excellency the Honourable Margaret Beasley and Mr Dennis Wilson, for their ongoing support. They continue to show great interest in our work, and we welcome every opportunity we have to receive a visit from them. This year we farewell two members of our board, outgoing President Alex Camps and long-serving board member Elizabeth Johnston. During his time as President, Alex oversaw a tremendous period of growth for the service, in addition to the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Elizabeth, as Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, oversaw genuine enhancements in our financial risk and compliance environment and led the introduction of the service's successful investment strategy. I extend my deepest thanks to Alex and Elizabeth and wish them all the best for the future. I would also like to welcome our newest board members, David Ryan, our legal expert, and Andrew Moynihan, who has substantial aviation industry experience. Before I finish, I would like to make a special thanks to all the staff and the executive of the South Eastern section for an incredible performance in a year like no other.
Organisations are just underpinned by their volunteers, so to give back is a very important thing. It began in the mid-50s with about 6 women, and now 65 years later we now have around 27 members and 9 life members. 45 to 86. Some of the ladies have actually been working in this auxiliary for 30 years. They're just fabulous. Our main thing is our pudding making. So it started off in the 50s where they probably made about 12 puddings, and now we make around 2,000 puddings, taking costs out probably about $45,000 to support the Flying Doctor. We had a ball recently and that was just absolutely amazing. We held an auction and we made $44,000. Someone just walked up in the afternoon with a motorbike and said, "Would you like to auction this?" Yes, thank you, ever so much. We actually have what they call a pig auction, which is a $250 meat voucher. So it first was auctioned at $4,000, put back in and out, and it made a total of $11,500 from this one small meat voucher. So people are amazingly generous. Since 1989, when we give them this year's donation, it will be $2 million. So the women have done an absolutely amazing job in that time. A great sense of pride and achievement.
Dubbo is the last major centre between really here and Broken Hill. So the first plane came in 99, and then in 2000 they did get a federal government grant to build the first hangar. That was really the beginning. The support group accumulated funds to be able to buy equipment for the planes, blood monitors and humicribs and things like that. The dental van opens into a fully equipped dental clinic. We've just approved funding from the support group to do a similar van as a general health clinic, and it will be invaluable to the people up north around Lightning Ridge, where GPs are just not readily available. We funded some non-emergency service vehicles. We free up the ambulance service for the emergency work. That sort of all led on to what we've got here in this tourist facility. And I mean, this is a one-off right throughout Australia. The local community are always incredibly supportive They realise the great work that's done by the Flying Doctor Service and how it's such an essential service.
The Outback car trek started back in 1990. We looked around for a charity that, like us, would devote its time to helping the people of the Outback, and the Royal Flying Doctor Service was an absolute no-brainer as a charity of choice. The Outback car trek is an event for predominantly older model two-wheel drive cars that takes people away from the capital cities out into the bush where they can meet and mix and mingle with people from all walks of life and have an extraordinary amount of fun driving roads they would never normally drive along. And there are some amazing characters. We've got people from scientists to school teachers, from journalists to janitors, from clerks to CEOs, everybody you can think of. And in the middle of all of that is a range of personalities that just makes the event so much fun, so generous, so gregarious, and so adventuresome. It's an absolute treasure to be able to work with them each year to raise money for Australia's most trusted charity. We did a survey only a few days ago and we found that the average trekker comes along on 13 events, so trekking gets in your blood. Since 1990 we've had 32 treks, and over those 32 treks we've raised $32.5 million for charity. On the Outback Car Trek 2022, on our first trek back from the COVID impact of the last few years, we raised $1,005,000 for the Flying Doctor Service.
The Silver City Bush Treadless commenced in 1998 from me cycling from Adelaide to Perth. I could only find 3 other people from Broken Hill to go to White Cliffs. So then I kindly invited 80 odd people, and that's when it commenced. So that's all of those years ago, and this one that we just finished was the 26th ride. The youngest was 46, I think, and then the eldest was believe it, but 87. When I reached 500,000, I was so excited to say 500,000, but now we're over 700, nearly 800 odd thousand so far. So it'd be great if I can match up and say 1 million, won't it?
RFDS Friends in the UK was formed in 2003. Its purpose purely is to raise funds in the UK for a remittance to Royal Flying Doctor Service in Australia. His Royal Highness is a fantastic supporter of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. He sees it as a fantastic facility for remote Australians, and when he takes on patronage of charitable work, he actually takes it seriously, and whenever he is able to get involved with an activity, he does. When the charity first started up, they managed to raise about £6 million in that first sort of year or two, and that amount of money allowed us to encourage the naming of the plane, the Friends in the UK, and it was great that His Royal Highness was able to do that in Longreach on one of his visits to Australia.
The group's been going since the early 2000s and started off by selling raffles. It slowly built up and started doing bigger things. They started up the recycling process in New South Wales, so the return and earn was given to us. Over the period up until COVID closed us, we donated more than $100,000.
You know, but when you're banking your few hundred, few thousand every week, it all adds up.
Nobody knocks the Flying Doctor. The Royal Flying Doctor receives good support from all the people that I know in this town.
A lot of people that have only got $1 will give you their last dollar.
We have a small hospital, but that small hospital is not equipped to deal with major problems. A lot of older people that live here, to retain their independence, are encouraged by the fact that if they have a medical emergency, they will be flown to a bigger hospital very quickly. They are really, really essential here.
Well, on 2 occasions, the Flying Doctor had assisted my family. On the last occasion, It gave me life, and that's pretty important to me. I'm still here, I'm still alive, and that's due to a flight with the Flying Doctor Service. So that's pretty strong motivation to support them. The most I can do is to leave them a bequest in my will, and I hope many other people will do the same.
Yes, there are many ways to donate to a charity. Obviously, there's monthly donations that anyone can make. But I recently found out that with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, they're also doing something called the Oceans to Outback. So I've decided to run 100 kilometres during the month of October with the hope of donating more money to the service.
Word of mouth is better than a newspaper. And they all tell their stories about how saved their baby, saved this, saved their grandchild. So it's our security blanket for us aged ones, because we know that if we get really sick, they're going to come in and take us to where we need to go.
I've been transported on it. They took me in, operated, and I woke up in hospital still alive.
My twin sister was in a terrible car accident when we were 17, and if it wasn't for the Flying Doctor and their transport of Hannah through to the RA in Adelaide, that essentially we wouldn't have her today. So we're just under 1 million acres, so we've had several retrievals out. And yeah, hearing that plane come in, I can tell you, is enough to give you the goosebumps. You just know, you're forever grateful because, yeah, it sustains us. Yeah, we're safe.
I woke up one morning and I was tingly all over, pins and needles. I was rushed off to the hospital and the specialist took one look and she said, we've got to get you to Sydney. And the Flying Doctor was called in from Dubbo. I had 4 heart bypasses and I'm here today because of the Flying Doctor Service.
I chose Flying Doctor because we cannot do without the Flying Doctor when we're out on the isolation. We have had to use them sadly twice, and now those cyclists from the cities have understood how we're desperate for keep the Flying Doctor flying.
It's fantastic work you do. You continue to reinforce the wonderful profile that the Flying Doctor Service has in Australia, and the people over here regard it extremely highly.
It's not just the people in isolation in the outback. The Flying Doctor Service is something that all Australians should be supporting.
There are always people in the outback who say to us quite simply that they'd be lost without the Flying Doctor, and there are always trekkers that want to go out of their way to make sure that the Flying Doctor is able to continue providing the finest care to the farthest corner.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our year in review. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing an insight into the work of our service over the 2021-22 financial year. I'm Greg Sam, CEO of the Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section. It's always been encouraging and humbling to reflect upon the achievements and the performance of our service as part of this annual review. Throughout the year, we were once again able to balance the provision of our usual services with the extraordinary demands of COVID. Regardless, we were also able to establish services in new regions and respond to many unforeseen challenges as we entered the third and, by most measures, the most significant year of the pandemic to date. This was possible due to our fantastic staff, the many productive partnerships with agencies across the state, and the generous support of our many friends and supporters, just like you. Our emergency retrieval services continued through a period of heightened community and health service restrictions, border closures and infection control requirements. And our primary care services adapted to the rapidly changing clinical and community environment, with many now operating at pre-pandemic levels. Pleasingly, we were able to return to face-to-face consultations after a need to move to telehealth services and in some instances temporarily suspending services during the first 2 years of COVID. In achieving this, I want to recognise the dedication and commitment of all our teams and staff, from frontline and operational staff to vital support roles. All our employees have worked together in an exceptional way to ensure our communities have the health care they needed. The COVID vaccination rollout involved the deployment of multiple teams across our network and beyond, administering vaccine via clinics in our existing communities, as well as new regions such as New England, North West Plains and the South Coast. Clinics varied in size from a handful of people on a remote property to hundreds a day over many consecutive days at Gunnedah, Tamworth and Narrabri. We were able to provide 694 COVID respiratory and vaccination clinics and administer almost 33,000 COVID vaccinations. This achievement has been made possible through strong working partnerships with primary health networks, local health districts and local Aboriginal medical and community controlled services. Whilst our COVID response drew heavily on our resources, the commitment to maintaining our core services saw our primary health and emergency retrieval service provide 85,000 occasions of care, including 7,231 patients seen at our primary health clinics. Our health service footprint grew with expansion into new regions in the northwest of New South Wales. Clinics at Growan, Barron Junction and Pilliga are now attended by a doctor and a primary health nurse. Investing in developing our staff will be a continued focus for us. As with many industries, we share the challenges of supporting, retaining and recruiting a skilled and talented workforce, which will enable us to continue to meet increasing service demand in a competitive labour market. Our growth potential will be closely linked to a corresponding capacity in our workforce in the years ahead. Shaped as it was by COVID, the year has changed both our service and the world within which we operate in many significant ways. We were called on to significantly scale up our operations whilst delivering on our existing commitments, and our performance throughout the year showed it was both possible and achievable through the resilience, support and motivation of our employees and the many of our valued partners. This experience leaves us with a strong legacy of being able to adapt to meet community needs in uncertain and changing times, something I'm sure will continue through the coming year. I want to thank our supporters who stay by our side and generously provide the means for us to deliver essential health services in remote and rural communities. Thank you.
I was living in Warren, central west New South Wales, a lovely little country town. I was nearly 36 weeks pregnant and we decided to go for a night to Lightning Ridge.
We thought, it's 4 or 5 weeks till the baby's due, good time to go and have a little break.
We had a really fun day, we saw the opal mines, had a nice dinner, all went to bed in our motel. And at 2 in the morning, I rolled over and suddenly thought, I think that might have been my waters breaking.
It's probably 2:30 in the morning and we are very far from any health service or hospital. The only option was to go to the local health clinic.
It was a really little 24-hour medical centre. And then I stormed on in and the nurse looked really overwhelmed. I was saying, I'm in labour, please help me. I need to get to Dobbo right now, right now.
They do not have birthing facilities at Lightning Ridge, so Anna needed to be transferred to Dobbo.
I was feeling really nervous. I'm not generally a good flyer. And it was bad weather, and I was in labour.
We just went down to the runway to have a look, but you could see nothing. It was foggy.
The plane tried to land twice, had to go back to Dubbo, and then came back a third time. The clouds were really low, and you could hear the plane right above it circling. And we're all just watching the clouds, just hoping, you know, please break through these clouds. And then we saw it. It came through the clouds. It was enormous relief. And that was where I met Kerry, the nurse who assisted me on the flight.
She was quite nervous and anxious.
Okay. You just let me know if you get a tightening or a pain, okay? And I'll be sitting right here next to you.
The medication wore off and my contractions became very strong while we were flying. Kerry was amazing. She's incredibly warm, incredibly calm, and I did feel like she's got this under control.
The plane landed this time and I started the journey down the highway to try and make it to the Dubbo Hospital in time.
So we landed, I was transferred to the hospital by ambulance, and at this point I'm now properly in labour.
I continued all the way to Dubbo and got there probably about 90 minutes before the baby was delivered.
It turned out we were very lucky to have made it to hospital because my baby had respiratory distress, and that meant he needed immediate care in the special care unit.
We were very grateful and very thankful of how everything panned out, and the support we got was, it was world class. It was great.
We went to the Royal Flying Doctors Museum to show the kids and have a look around, and happened to bump into Kerry just by chance. And it was amazing to be able to say to her, thank you, you know, here is my happy, healthy 6-month-old baby who's here, you know, thanks to the Royal Flying Doctors, really.
It was wonderful to meet them all, and it was wonderful to hear such impact the Flying Doctor had on her and her family and her journey.
I think it's incredibly reassuring for people who live in regional New South Wales to know that the Royal Flying Doctors is just a phone call away, that you can be in incredibly isolated circumstances, but you are never out of the reach of really high quality healthcare.
Hello and welcome to the Royal Flying Doctors Service South Eastern Section Year in Review. My name is Andrew Kirk, and joining me for this panel discussion is David Lyle, the President of the South Eastern Section, Saran Cook, the Vice President, Greg Sam, our CEO, and Annabelle Whitehead, the General Manager of Corporate Affairs and Fundraising. So David, I'll pose the first question to you. COVID has had an enormous impact on all organisations across Australia. How has it impacted the South Eastern Section itself?
Thanks, Andy. That's a great question. COVID-19 has been with us for 3 years now in Australia, and it's affected the whole community, including those of rural New South Wales. For the RFDS, the restrictions and lockdowns have really impacted on the way that we've been able to deliver our services, but I'm proud to say that we've been able to maintain our service access despite the fact that we've had to change the way we've worked. And also, I think really importantly, we were tasked by the Commonwealth Government to actually provide vaccination services and other COVID-related services to not only our network in far western New South Wales, but across the whole of rural New South Wales. And we delivered over 33,000 vaccinations through over 500 clinics. We also had to transport over 100 people who were potential COVID cases. So it was a great effort by the team. I'm really proud of the work that the staff has done over the particularly last year when the epidemic was at its greatest in Western New South Wales.
Thanks, David. That sounds like an amazing achievement in trying times. But what have we learned, and how will it change the way we operate in the future now?
It already has, and I think one of the key things that came out of the pandemic was that we actually had to change the way we delivered services. We've actually much stronger component of our service deliveries around virtual health, and that's adding to the work that we already do in the face-to-face delivery of services. It also, because the pandemic has actually exposed a number of workforce shortages that have become much more evident, it's clear that we need to position ourselves to be able to provide services to communities that are actually missing out now. And I think that the importance of providing primary healthcare services is also something that has become evident, and the RFDS is moving to provide support to communities within our network, but also beyond.
David, thank you very much. Next question to you, Greg. It's a financial question. The Royal Flying Doctor Service South Eastern Section has had a budget deficit this year. That's the second year running. You're predicting another budget deficit for 2022-23. What's the reasons for these budget deficits?
Thanks, Andy. No organisation likes to plan for a deficit, but our board and the organisation really responded to the level of uncertainty that COVID had brought us. We were preparing for the likelihood of a decrease in our revenue across our service, but equally, the board wanted to make sure that we continue to invest in our staff and to aim to optimise all the services we could deliver. The board opted to continue to invest for us to be able to continue to offer services during the pandemic, which meant that in having a deficit budget, we were still able to continue to hire staff, to continue to be able to increase our services across our footprint in Western New South Wales, particularly into the northwestern. But as David has already outlined, we needed to increase our capacity to rapidly take up immunisation programs and COVID testing programs. All of this effect meant that we were investing at a time of decreased revenue, hence the result of a deficit.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, Andy, I think it's really important to say that the board is extremely focused on making sure that the RFDS is not only sustainable into the future, but also really fit for purpose for the needs of our communities going forward. And so we're very focused on making sure that we shape the organisation to make sure it is as efficient and effective as it can be and sustainable going into the future.
Thank you, Saran. Greg, the Royal Flying Doctor Service nationally has signed an agreement with the federal government of $1 billion over 10 years. What does that mean for the South Eastern Section?
The Flying Doctor Service was very pleased with the negotiations with the Commonwealth Government, which came at the end of our funding agreement. This new agreement allows us to have some certainty of a relationship with the Commonwealth Government for funding into the future. As we speak today, we in the South Eastern Section are still negotiating the final allocation to us, but we're not expecting an increase in our budget, and if anything, the risk is that we will get a smaller proportion of that. And to Saran's point earlier, this requires us to make sure that into the future we have the right service and the right structure to support it so that it is sustainable. There is clearly a lot of funding pressure on the organisation through the next 3 to 5 years.
Thanks, Greg. Now, Saran, I'd like to talk to you about another important relationship, and that's with the Queensland section. What does that mean for the South Eastern Section and our relationship?
Thanks, Andy. We've always been great friends with Queensland Section, our neighbours, and we've done a lot of things with them in the past. Of recent times, we're really pleased to be able to say we have entered into a joint venture, and that's really about being able to collaborate and to make sure that we find things that are mutually beneficial to ourselves and to them, and to work together to make sure that we can improve our efficiency and be able to provide better, more high quality services to our communities. So initially what we've started to work with them on is our information technology and also aviation. And as I said, we're really looking for efficiencies, how we can learn from each other, do things better and make sure that the end service that we're providing to our communities on the ground is as efficient as it can be.
Saran, that sounds very exciting, and thank you very much. I'd like to talk to Anna Bay now about one of the biggest challenges facing all organisations in Australia, and that is the shortage of the workforce. What are we experiencing here at the Royal Flying Doctors Service?
That's right, Andy. At the RFDS, like many other organisations in Australia, we are experiencing quite high demand for our workforce, and that is quite a challenge for us in terms of our ongoing recruitment. We have a very, very specialised and very experienced workforce across very specific geographies that are quite spread across the region we operate in. We continue to see that challenge unfolding as the backload of healthcare needs that arose as a result of COVID is now being seen by our healthcare professionals. But we're doing as much as we can to double down our efforts in terms of attracting and building on our recruitment efforts. And in addition to that, also investing in our leaders and looking to grow our own wherever we can. In addition to those sorts of measures, we're also looking to constantly evolve the way that we organise ourselves so that we can be delivering as efficient service as possible while obviously meeting the needs of the community and ensuring quality and safety in everything that we do.
Thanks, Anna Bay. Certainly exciting times ahead. The next 6 years, we will celebrate our 100th birthday. I'd like to pose a very simple question to the panel here, and that is, what can we expect to see around our 100th birthday? So, Anne, I'd like to start with you. 6 years' time, it's our 100th birthday. Where are we?
Look, it's an extremely exciting time, being 94 years of age and coming up to our 100th birthday. From a strategic perspective, we're very committed to making sure that the Royal Flying Doctor Service is a whole-of-life, holistic care provider for those living in remote and regional and rural New South Wales. So we want to be able to look after our communities from birth till end of life, and also including those that suffer from chronic illness and other complex health needs. So we're expanding our primary health services throughout the region, and throughout the last year we're really pleased to be able to say that we've opened new primary health clinics in Burrinjuck, the Pilliga and also Grawin, and in those clinics we have a doctor and a primary health nurse on site as well. So it's very exciting, and I think that's what you can expect to see more of over the next 6 years.
Saran, thank you. David, 6 years' time, where do you see us being?
Andy, I actually want to be a bit more pragmatic. I think in the next couple of years, COVID is still going to be with us. I think the RFDS is going to be playing an important role in protecting the community through the provision of vaccinations going forward, as well as potentially providing testing if required. So I think to get us to the 6 years, there's going to be a bit of work around the COVID epidemic as it goes forward.
Thank you, David. Now, Anna Bay, how important are our relationships with stakeholders and the communities over the next 6 years?
I think the communities that we serve have always been core to everything that we do at the RFDS, and that will certainly continue as we look forward to our 100th birthday. I think that we as an organisation can be very grateful for our supporters in terms of our donors and community groups as well. And I'd like to see over the next 6 years us deepening those relationships and potentially looking at new ways of engaging in addition to our ongoing relationships with other stakeholders like government.
Thanks, Anna Bay. Now, Greg, as the captain who is flying us towards our birthday in 6 years' time, what's it going to be? What's our party going to be like?
I think everyone likes to hit a century, right? And there's no doubt that what's expected of RFDS is both more of the same, but also for us to continue to evolve, to continue to add value into the communities, so that that's reflected in everything that my colleagues have said today. Our ability to mobilise the relationships we have with the health sector, the relationships we have with our donors and supporters, but importantly, the relationships we hold in community. And those relationships fundamentally will inform and drive the direction that RFDS needs to go as we head towards our centenary. We're very optimistic about it. There's a lot of support for us turning into our second century. And as we get there, I think we've got some work to do to emerge from COVID, but the outlook is very bright.
Greg, that sounds amazing. Thank you very much for your time. Saran, thank you. Anna Bay, thank you. David, thank you. And thank you for watching the 2022 Year in Review for the Royal Flying Doctors Service South Eastern Section.
I did have to grow up in rural and remote parts of Australia. So my dad was an opal miner. He'd been an opal miner since he was 14 years of age, and had always lived in quirky, isolated parts because that's where all the opals and the gemstones like to live. Growing up there, we didn't have the healthcare that lots of our city counterparts take for granted, and the RFDS was a huge part of our community. My dad was part of the Mines Rescue Squad. My earliest memory of RFDS is sitting with my dad in the front seat of the car with our lights shining down the runway, waiting for the plane to arrive, sort of started to light and ignite that passion to do nursing. And I guess as I grew older and I became more familiar with the healthcare settings and bits and pieces, flying around in the sky, collecting people from rural locations just seems like the adventure of a lifetime. Obviously, to become a flight nurse, you need to have critical care experience, and we're all midwives as well. So we consider ourselves jack of all trades, master of none. But to be able to just be on the ground 1 minute, packing equipment or sorting or dealing with emails, to then getting a phone call, be packing an aeroplane and be travelling tens of thousands of kilometres from home to pick someone up on their worst day is actually such a rewarding part of my day. From traumas to mental health crises to heart attacks to babies being born to sick children, every day is honestly a different day. I have never felt heartwarming thank yous like I receive each and every day. It's just a very sincere gratitude that these patients show you, and it really warms your soul. It is just, it really makes your long day work. People that live in the city, obviously, they take healthcare for granted. However, when you live thousands and thousands of kilometres from an ambulance or even a base hospital, you don't have the luxury of having those facilities at your doorstep. When my dad became gravely ill and was a good 8 hours journey from any sort of healthcare, the Flying Doctor were able to get into Adelaide in the nick of time. And without the Flying Doctor service, that Dad wouldn't have pulled through. It's a career like none other. Like, if you've got a sense of adventure and you love nursing, it's a career that you will honestly love. You got the best view of the world from up there in the sky.